T9C got the fucking juice.
Silver's the new gold.
Chris, this shit's fire.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the JT Sports Podcast. I'm your host, JT. We got a lot of things to discuss on this episode. The Seahawks have hired their new head coach. Mike McDonald is in. Got my thoughts on that. Also going to be explaining why Lamar Jackson seems to struggle in the playoffs. He plays so incredible during the regular season, but when the playoffs come around, he isn't the same player. Dan Campbell did his fourth down aggressiveness, cost the Detroit Lions a spot in the Super Bowl. The Eagles have hired two new coordinators. Oregon, I got some thoughts on what I believe they're going to do in their first season in the Big Ten Conference. There are many Steelers fans who are outraged with their new offensive coordinator. Is it an overreaction? Was it a good hire? Is it a bad hire? Is this the right offensive coordinator to develop Kenny Pickett? And we're also going to get into some other things going around the league. The Raiders have some interest in Russell Wilson. What Jerry Jones had to say about Bill Belichick. Before we begin, if you haven't already, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. Remember that we're not just a YouTube channel, we are a podcast. And you can find us on all podcasting platforms. Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get your podcast from. The JT Sports Podcast is available. Give us a 5-star review if you enjoy this episode. Share with your friends, family members, and acquaintances. And before we begin, I just wanted to say that we normally don't go live on Wednesdays. The only reason we're going live tonight is because we couldn't live stream last night on Tuesday because we had some technical difficulties, and we're not going to be able to go live tomorrow on Thursdays like we normally do because I have a school project that I have to work on. So this is going to be a really lengthy live stream tonight, so I can make up for me not being able to live stream tomorrow and make up for the loss of time from Tuesday night. Before we begin, here's a word from our partner, Mint Mobile. Does it piss you off how much you pay for your monthly phone bill? Why are you getting frustrated when our partner Mint Mobile has plans as low as $15 a month that give you unlimited talk and text on the nation's largest 5G network? Stop getting frustrated with how much you spend on your monthly phone bill and go to trymintmobile.com/JT Sports and description and pin comment down below to get access to premium wireless for only $15 a month. That's only $15 a month. Switching to Mint It's easy. It only takes 15 minutes to do. If you're pissed off with how much you pay for your monthly phone bill, switch to Mint Mobile today and go to trymintmobile.com/JT Sports in the description and pin comment down below to get premium wireless for only $15 a month. Stop getting upset with how much you spend on your monthly phone bill and switch to Mint Mobile today. That's it. The Seattle Seahawks have a new head coach. They have hired Baltimore Ravens defensive coordinator Mike Macdonald, who's going to be replacing the legendary Pete Carroll. This is a really interesting decision for Seattle because it will start going into this hiring process that they wanted a head coach who had experience and was going to be able to maintain the energy and the atmosphere that Pete Carroll brought to the team. Mike Macdonald, I want to call him McDaniel, but Mike Macdonald is the youngest head coach in the NFL right now with this job being taken by him. He's 36 years old, and he's risen up the ranks really fast. He spent nearly a decade on the Baltimore Ravens staff. He started back in 2014 as an intern and worked his way up from defensive backs coach to linebackers coach, and then he was the defensive coordinator for Michigan in 2021, and then the last 2 seasons that he's been in Baltimore, he's revolutionized that Ravens defense. And Mike Macdonald gets a lot of comparisons to Sean McVay. He's not an offensive-minded coach. He's a defensive-minded coach. And for what a lot of people say about him, he's the Sean McVay of defensive coordinators. And there's a very good reason why people say this about him. You look at what he did with the Ravens defensively this year. Kyle Hamilton played at a high level. You had Jadeveon Clowney, who pretty much had the best season of his NFL career. Justin Madubuike was an all-pro. There were so many players on this Ravens defense that benefited from playing under Mike Macdonald's scheme. Seattle, their biggest problem under Pete Carroll the last couple of years, or pretty much since Richard Sherman and Cam Chancellor and the Legion of Boom, or Doom, whatever it was called, disassembled, has been the defense. And they haven't really been able to get it right. You have so many young, talented players on the defense side of the football, like Devon Witherspoon, Boye Mafe, Jordan Brooks, who have been underutilized because they haven't been put in the proper scheme. Seattle, landing a guy like Mike Macdonald is definitely going to pay dividends to how good this defense is going to be under him now that you have somebody who knows how to get the most out of the young pieces that they have on that side of the football. Hell, if they keep Jamal Adams, if he can find a way to use Kyle Hamilton, there's no reason why he shouldn't be able to get Jamal Adams playing back to the level that we used to see him playing at when he was with the New York Jets. Right now, Jamal Adams has been a massive disappointment since the Seattle Seahawks have traded up for him. And they gave up a lot to get this dude. Maybe Mike Macdonald can save Jamal Adams' career and resurrect his career like he was able to do with guys like Jadeveon Clowney. This is also somebody that has a really unique personality. When you think about Pete Carroll, this was somebody who was always on the move. It was hard for him to sit down. He was warming up, practicing with the players. Mike Macdonald is more of a introverted guy, but he's still a very good leader. And with how smart and innovative of a football mind he is, it's going to be really exciting if you're a Seahawks fan to think about how good Seattle's defense is going to be year one under him. Your defense has been terrible for like damn near a decade. You shouldn't have that same problem with this dude being your head coach. Who's going to be your offensive coordinator? Who's going to be your quarterback? It's the biggest question. Is he going to be able to hire the right offensive coordinator? He doesn't come from a Sean McVay or Kyle Shanahan coaching tree, so there's not just a guy that he has hanging in the background that he's cool with, that he knows that we can have confidence in. And Geno Smith, he probably should still be the starter next season, but it probably will be in your best interest to find his potential successor in the draft. And the problem that's going to arise is that you're going to have to probably trade up if you want one of the more premium quarterbacks in the draft, such as a Drake May or Caleb Williams or even Jaden Daniels. You could get Michael Penix, Bo Nix, maybe a Spencer Rattler falls into your lap if you don't want to trade up. But this whole notion that defensive coaches don't make good head coaches and it's hard to win in today's NFL if you don't have an offensive-minded coach is not true to me. Yes, there are offensive-minded coaches taking over the league, but like we seen with DeMeco Ryans down there in Houston, if you get quarterback and the offensive coordinator right, you can have success as a defensive-minded head coach. The problem is that these Mike Tomlins of the world, the Robert Salehs, they don't have an eye for quarterback or for hiring decent OCs. Mike McDonald, if he can not make the mistake that the rest of these defensive coaches make, this can be a fantastic hire by Seattle. When you're getting called the Sean McVay of defensive coaches, you just don't get that praise just thrown out there about you without a good reason. There is a lot of respect for what Mike McDonald has done in the short time that he's been in the NFL. And when you rise up through the ranks this quickly, this young, that shows that there's something special about you in terms of what you do from a schematic standpoint and how you're able to get the most out of the players in your scheme. This isn't a Brandon Staley situation. Brandon Staley was only the head coach for the Chargers for a few seasons, and he was fairly inexperienced. He was not qualified for the job, and he only spent one season as the DC for the Rams. Mike McDonald doesn't have that same background that Brandon Staley had. He's been with the Ravens for a very long time. He went to Michigan for that one season because John Harbaugh gave him to his brother Jim Harbaugh, and they kind of swapped like coaches on their staffs pretty much. And then once Jim Harbaugh got done with him, he gave him right back to John Harbaugh, and the Ravens defense was the only thing that showed up in the AFC Championship. I'm sorry. This defense was lights out in the playoffs, and with what Seattle has defensively, it's going to be really scary to think about what Mike McDonald is going to be able to do with the talent that they have on that side of the ball. And they got talent on offense too. Seattle has one of the best young rosters in the National Football League. This is a team that doesn't need a rebuild. If Mike McDonald ends up panning out as the right hire for Seattle, they could be in contention for the NFC Championship as soon as next season. This is already a pretty made roster. They got a good offensive line, 2 young tackles, Charles Cross, Abraham Lucas, good receivers, stout running backs. Quarterback isn't too bad. Like, Geno Smith can suffice if you can't do better, but if you bring in a young guy, I don't think quarterback is going to be a means to an end for Seattle next year in terms of, oh, it's going to be terribly bad. You should still be able to get a little bit of juice out of Geno Smith. And with better coaching, if you make a Grand Slam offensive coordinator hire, this can be a hire that we look back upon a year from now and say this was the best hire by any other team in this cycle, and I believe that it is. I'm a big fan of this hire. The hiring of Mike McDonald by Seattle right now ranks number 1 for me in terms of who I believe is going to be the most successful head coach outside of Jim Harbaugh, who is unproven yet. I got to go with Mike McDonald. This is an incredible hire by the Seattle Seahawks. Lamar Jackson was not good in the Baltimore Ravens AFC Championship loss to Kansas City. It's not fair to put all of the blame on Lamar because he didn't play awful. There were some good plays that he made, such as the big run on 4th down. He also had a touchdown that he threw to Zay Flowers when he spun out of a sack, and he threw a 30-yard dot. But outside of those 2 plays, Lamar Jackson didn't look like how he played in the regular season or even against the Houston Texans. It's funny how when we think about Lamar Jackson, one thing that never comes to mind, at least for me, is him being clutch. When I think of Lamar, I think of the most athletically gifted quarterback in the history of the National Football League. I don't think of somebody who I necessarily will put my trust in with 2 minutes left in the game, down the touchdown. We need Lamar Jackson to engineer a game-winning drive to win us the game. Now, I'm not saying that he doesn't have the talent and he's not capable of being able to do that, but I don't look at Lamar Jackson as being a clutch quarterback or being a quarterback that rises to the occasion, such as Mahomes, Joe Burrow, and even Josh Allen. And after how Lamar looked against Kansas City, I don't really think it's an argument right now about who's the second best quarterback in the league. It's definitely either Josh Allen or Joe Burrow. I'll probably have to go Josh Allen. Lamar Jackson didn't go out how Josh Allen went against Kansas City. Josh Allen went out swinging. He left everything on the field. Lamar, there was a lot in this game that he left off the field. And I was really heartbroken watching Lamar lose that game. I was really rooting and pulling for Lamar Jackson to get to the Super Bowl. This dude is my favorite player in the NFL right now. I've been watching him since his freshman season at Louisville. But there's a reason why he has a 2-4 record in the postseason. And it's not all because he hasn't had talent around him. He may not have had ideal situations, but there's been games that the Ravens have lost in the postseason because Lamar didn't play good. You remember when he threw that interception in the red zone against the Buffalo Bills in the divisional round a few years ago? You think about how he looked against the Tennessee Titans the year he won his first MVP back in 2019. He didn't show up in that game. And the team didn't show up neither. But when you're a quarterback like Lamar and you're viewed universally as a top 3, top 5 quarterback in the game, there are certain expectations that you have placed on your shoulders that people expect you to be able to still play at a high level, still be able to show up in the biggest game of the season and carry your team even if you don't have everything around you. Lamar is regarded as an elite quarterback. Elite quarterbacks should be able to overcome certain limitations. The play calling was abysmal out of Todd Monken, but it's not like they didn't put the ball in Lamar's hands. Lamar Jackson, despite what people want to say about does he get unfairly criticized and how much blame does he deserve for the Ravens' loss, still is the main reason why Baltimore lost that game. Throwing an interception in the fourth quarter on one of your final possessions of the game in the triple coverage is the exact reason why Lamar Jackson, I can't say he's better than Josh Allen. Josh Allen shows up when the game is on the line. Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow do the same thing. Lamar Jackson in the playoff doesn't. And I can't trust playoff Lamar. As much as I love Lamar Jackson, and as painful as it is for me to admit that, Lamar Jackson isn't a quarterback that I think of as somebody who I can trust late in games when I need my team to step up and win the game with the ball in his hands to make it to the Super Bowl. The AFC Championship was Lamar Jackson's opportunity to show everybody that not only was he as good as Mahomes, but he potentially is better than Patrick Mahomes, and he didn't do that. Yes, there were a lot of other factors around him that let him down, but there were still moments when Lamar Jackson could have took over this game. When you're Lamar Jackson, you're supposed to be able to go toe-to-toe with a guy like Patrick Mahomes. The receivers for Kansas City have been less as ideal. Hell, Kansas City's team is a lot worse than what Lamar's team has been this season. Their offensive line hasn't been great. Lamar has better receivers than Patrick Mahomes. Lamar had the better team than what Patrick Mahomes did and still lost. And got outplayed by Mahomes for the whole entire game. Hell, Lamar was not that good throwing the football, even though he looked better in the pocket, waiting for guys to get open. He was overthrowing guys. He was underthrowing guys. This just didn't look like the Lamar Jackson that we've seen in the regular season. This still doesn't take away from Lamar's greatness. There's been plenty of great Hall of Fame quarterbacks who have been great in the regular season, but weren't so great in the postseason, i.e. Peyton Manning. Drew Brees, he's another one who wasn't great in the playoffs. Phillip Rivers, Lamar Jackson, I don't think he's never going to be able to get Baltimore to a Super Bowl. But right now, why the Ravens cannot advance far in the playoffs is because Lamar Jackson just for some reason doesn't step up in the big moments. You can't put that on the coaching. You can't put that on the supporting cast. That's a Lamar Jackson problem. You see, when it comes to criticizing Lamar Jackson, there's a way to criticize him while not trying to make it seem like the dude is overrated, because he's not overrated. He's just a player that at this stage of his career, he's hit that turning point where for him to get over the top, for him to really cement himself and his legacy and win the Super Bowl, you have to get through Patrick Mahomes, who right now is the greatest quarterback of the current era. And there's been plenty of quarterbacks that are just as talented as Lamar who have been unable to do so. But Joe Burrow was able to get through Patrick Mahomes. Why? Because he was able to step up in the fourth quarter. Lamar Jackson, the fourth quarter of these playoff games, he doesn't come through for Baltimore. And listen, they ran the ball only 6 times with their running backs. We get that the game plan was not good. They got to find ways to play complementary football in the playoffs. The Ravens got away from who they are. But at the same time, Lamar Jackson had the ball in his hands. And when you put the ball in your franchise quarterback's hands, you expect them to find a way to win you that game. And there were several opportunities that Lamar Jackson had to put Baltimore in position to win, and he wasn't able to deliver. Until Lamar Jackson is able to become a better fourth quarter performer and just a better playoff performer in general, he's going to continue to come up short in the playoffs. And another thing that concerns me about Lamar Jackson is that he's one of those quarterbacks that when he's on the field, you win a lot of games. But that's the problem. When he's on the field, he played every game this season, had no injury problems. I don't know if Lamar Jackson is going to have that next season. He's one of those quarterbacks that when he's fully healthy, it's kind of a rarity. Hell, before this season, his last 2 seasons all got ended during the midway point of the season. And he was out for the year. He didn't come back. So I don't know if Lamar Jackson from this point forward is going to have any more seasons when he's going to be available for the entire year. Lamar Jackson, if he wants to get over the hump, he has to get better in these playoff games, in these big moments when the lights are the brightest, because he was throwing his helmet on the sidelines. He was frustrated. He was emotional. He wasn't composed. And you look at Patrick Mahomes on the other sideline, no matter how tough the game got, no matter how tough the going was for Kansas City, he didn't get frustrated. He kept a level head. He stayed composed. And that was the difference between Mahomes and Lamar in this game. Lamar wasn't himself. He got rattled. Mahomes wasn't. And that's why he delivered on the biggest play of the game on that third down throw to MVS. And Lamar Jackson, in the biggest moment of the fourth quarter, he threw the ball into triple coverage. It resulted in an interception. Lamar Jackson has become a better performer in crunch time for Baltimore to reach a Super Bowl. When you play against Patrick Mahomes, you can't have an off day. Mahomes may be able to have an off day and still hang around with you because it's just Patrick Mahomes, but anybody else, you got to be damn near flawless to beat this dude, especially with the game on the line, because you know that's when you're going to get the best of him. And that's how it was when you were going up against Tom Brady in his prime. When you think about what it took to beat Tom Brady in the Super Bowl, it took heroic efforts. Nick Foles has a statue built for a reason. That was one of the best playoff performances that we've ever seen out of Nick Foles when he took Philly to the Super Bowl that year and they took down Brady. Same thing with Eli Manning. Eli Manning is a future Hall of Famer because of mainly what he did in the playoffs, in particular, how he played against Tom Brady. Lamar Jackson, to become part of football immortality and to really cement himself as one of the greatest quarterbacks of this era, he has to get past Mahomes. And until he does that, you can't stamp him yet. You really can't. And I love Lamar, but if I was to pick a quarterback other than Mahomes who I would trust in the ball in their hands in the fourth quarter against them, it would be either Josh Allen or Joe Burrow. Now, who's more talented? I still go Lamar, but Lamar just hasn't shown the ability to consistently be able to elevate when the game is on the line. And he doesn't really have a lot of fourth quarter comebacks because the Ravens are so good and he's so good that he doesn't really find himself trailing in a lot of these big games. But you still get defined by what you do in adversity. You know what they say, pressure either busts pipes or makes diamonds, and the pipe of Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens got burst against Kansas City in the AFC Championship. But I just was really disappointed with what I saw of Lamar Jackson and their loss against Kansas City. I was expecting a lot more out of him. I was not expecting him to throw an interception, a triple coverage with the game on the line. And I have money on Lamar too. You know, they blew my parlay. It's just, until Lamar just gets better in these big matchups, gets better with the game on the line, he's going to continue to not succeed and go further than what he has gone in the playoffs. There's been a lot said about Big Balls Dan Campbell's fourth down decisions in the Lions NFC Championship loss to the 49ers. Many people believe that Dan Campbell's aggressiveness cost the Lions a spot in the Super Bowl. Here's the thing. Dan Campbell's fourth down decisions, to me, were not the reason why Detroit lost. You see, in hindsight, it's easy to criticize something when it doesn't work, even when it's the reason why you've gotten in the spot that you were in. If it wasn't for Dan Campbell's fourth down decision-making throughout the season, Detroit probably wouldn't have even made the NFC Championship game. And the fourth down attempts weren't bad. It's not like he was going for it on 4th and long. What costed Detroit not being able to convert in those fourth down spots was due to poor execution. If Josh Reynolds didn't have fucking butterfingers, they get one of those fourth down attempts, and then on another fourth down attempt, Jared Goff acted like he was too scared to run the damn football. He was like a damn statue in the pocket. And then the fourth down attempt that Dan Campbell should have went for it when he just took the field goal instead was before halftime, and I felt like he should have went for the touchdown going into halftime. You feel a lot more comfortable going into halftime up 28-7 versus 24-7. You're going up against the 49ers. You know that eventually their offense is going to click. There was no way that Detroit's defense was going to play the way they did in the first half in the second half of the NFC Championship. You knew eventually that thing was about to fall apart, and it fell apart in a major way. Hell, you had Jahmyr Gibbs who fumbled the football, which completely shifted all the momentum to the 49ers. You see, Dan Campbell's aggressiveness is getting criticized because it didn't work. But with these field goal kickers, I wouldn't trust my field goal kicker neither. I don't give a damn how accurate he was during the regular season and in the games before. You can't trust these kickers in the playoffs. Unless you got a Justin Tucker as your field goal kicker, you can't trust the soul when it comes to who's kicking field goals. These field goal kickers cost way too many games. And if you're Dan Campbell, I'm not going to put the game in the hands of my kicker. I'm going to put the game in the hands of my offense, led by the best offensive coordinator in the NFL, Ben Johnson. It wasn't that the play calling was bad or the fourth down decisions were awful. The players just didn't execute. You don't game plan for getting the guy wide open just to drop the ball. The timeout at the end was devastating. All right, the clock management by Dan Campbell was way more of a bigger factor for Detroit missing out on making it to the Super Bowl than it was his fourth down decisions. Detroit was the best team in the NFL on converting fourth down attempts. So it's not like it was a situation where he was just getting away from what his identity was. It's funny how we're criticizing the Baltimore Ravens for only running the football with their running back 6 times, but we're criticizing Dan Campbell for remaining true to who he is. The hypocrisy of it all. Isn't that crazy? You think, I get what some people are saying, well, this is different. This is the NFC Championship. Like, you got to have a feel for when to go for it on fourth down. You got to have an understanding of the momentum of the game. And there is a lot of truth to that. I remember Urban Meyer a couple of years ago on Fox Noon Kickoff saying something about fourth down attempts. And even if you are good at them, you got to pick your spots based on how the game is going. That's understandable. But with how the game was going, if you're Detroit and you have the 49ers who are rallying back in a really rapid pace, then of course you got to go for it. You can't just settle for field goals because listen, what if the Lions would have lost this game and they would have kicked the field goals and they didn't go for it on fourth down? Then you would have people saying, oh, Dan Campbell got away from what got him there. Oh, what happened to aggressive Dan? You never would win in any situation if you're a coach like Dan Campbell. People are going to criticize you if you go for it and it doesn't work. And they're going to criticize you if you take the points because they were going to say you were playing too conservative. You needed to play to win. I like Dan Campbell's approach. Hell, if I was a head coach, I would be doing the same thing. If it's 4th and 3 and shorter, I don't care where we're at on any side of the field. As long as we're past our own 30-yard line, we should be going for it on 4th and 3 and shorter. If we can't convert on 4th and 3, then our offense doesn't deserve to be on the damn field. You should be able to convert a 4th and 3. Dan Campbell plays to win. He doesn't play to lose. He doesn't play to play it safe. That's what football is about. You got to be aggressive. Hell, that's what life is. Everything that you do in life is a gamble in a sense because you never know if it's going to work out. Dan Campbell going for it on fourth down has been his mantra. That's what the Detroit Lions are. And the players, they like his fourth down aggressiveness. And they, you ask them after the game how they feel about his decisions to go for it on fourth down. They support him 110% because that's who he is. And that's why they love him. And that's why the Lions have made it to where they are at this point. Ben Johnson is coming back as OC again. Why? Because he likes Dan Campbell and he feels that remaining the OC in Detroit is better than being a head coach elsewhere for the Commanders or whoever else. That's a testament to how good of a coach Dan Campbell is. So the fact that people want to try to crucify this dude and say that he costed Detroit with this fourth down decision makings is really hypocritical when people are bashing Baltimore from not playing true to who they were when they lost to Kansas City. The Detroit Lions under Dan Campbell are a team that you know what they want to do. They want to win the game. They're not going to put it in the hands of their kicker. They're not going to they don't want to give you a chance to win the game neither. They want to win it themselves. They want to take the game by their throat. The worst fourth down decision that Dan Campbell made in the NFC Championship was not going for it before halftime. If you're going to go for it for the remainder of the game after that, you might as well have went for it before halftime because being up 28-7 is a lot better than settling for 3 and being up 24-7. When you had the opportunity to go for it before halftime, you had all the momentum on your side. Your offense was rolling and San Francisco's defense was on their heels. That was the perfect opportunity to strike and really make a statement with having a big halftime lead. You go for it on that fourth down and you get it and you go up 28-7 and the 49ers have a way different game plan in the second half. Then you maybe could be less aggressive in the second half with you going for it on fourth down and maybe you take a field goal instead of going for it on one of those fourth down attempts. But that's because you're up by so much. But if you're going to be aggressive when you have the opportunity to really take control of the game. Getting a touchdown in that spot instead of a field goal has all the momentum on your side. And it's a huge crusher to San Francisco. Detroit just didn't execute in those fourth down spots. It wasn't the decision to go for it that lost Detroit the game. It was the drop by Josh Reynolds, Jared Goff being scared to run the damn football, and then you have Jahmyr Gibbs fumbling away the game. That's what costed Detroit this ball game. When you get in the NFC Championship, you got to be able to execute, and you can't have any self-inflicted mistakes. The 49ers won because they had less self-inflicted errors in the second half. They played flawlessly. That's why they outscored Detroit, 27-7 in the second half? Hell, that's what life is about. You got to take gambles. Sometimes they pay off, sometimes they don't. But you just can't get away from who you are, what got you here. Yeah, you got to have a good feel for the game, but at the same time, I'm not about to put the game in the hands of my kicker. I'd rather go ahead and try to win the game with my offense that has been balling for basically the majority of the first half than have faith in the field goal kicker that, come on, we know what these field goal kickers do in these big moments. I agree with Dan Campbell's big balls decision. That's why I call him Big Balls Dan Campbell, man. This dude doesn't care about what situation, what the time is. He's going to go for it and do what's in the best interest of trying to win the game. He plays to win. That's what football is about. You play to win. You don't play to be safe. Because playing to be safe is the same thing as playing to lose. And if I'm the Detroit Lions players, hell, I ain't got no problem losing the game the way that we did. Yeah, we gave up a big lead, but I'd rather give up a big lead and go out swinging than going out being conservative playing to lose. I love Dan Campbell. This is my favorite head coach in the NFL. I love that he remains true to himself. People try to make it seem like he's this meathead on steroids as a head coach. He's overly emotional. He can be overly emotional at times, but football is an emotional game. You have to be able to control your emotions and harness that into being able to execute on the field, and the Lions didn't do that. The reason why they didn't get that fourth down attempt in their loss to the Dallas Cowboys a few weeks ago isn't because of it being an emotional decision, but just because it was poor execution. At that point, your players were already a little bit demoralized because of the penalty of it getting called back the first time. And then you go for it 2 other times. That would have been a more ideal spot just to take the points and go into overtime. But in the playoffs, you're in it to win it. You're not in it to be safe. I don't believe there's anything called smart decisions in the NFL. There are decisions that have a higher probability of you winning the game, and decisions that you make that don't work out could cost you. But in Dan Campbell's situation, it wasn't the decisions that costed Detroit the game. It was the execution in those spots that costed them the game. So I got nothing against Dan Campbell's aggressiveness. I hope that he keeps being aggressive. People only criticize it when it doesn't work. But when it works, though, everybody's singing your praises. We're mad at Baltimore because they got away from who they were as a football team, only running their running backs or giving their running back 6 carries against Kansas City. But yet we're going to be hypocritical of Dan Campbell's being true to himself. We got to make up our minds, people. Are we going to just listen to the analytics community? Or are we going to be able to have somewhat of some fair judgment with how we criticize the performances and the decision-making of these head coaches? It's easy to say what Dan Campbell should have done when you're watching it from your mama's basement, eating a bag of Cheez-Its, versus you actually being in those shoes. Like, I don't think there was anything wrong with Dan Campbell's fourth down play calling. It just was poor execution. Before we move on, we got a lot more things to talk about on this episode. We're going to be getting into the Eagles' new coordinator hires. Are they going to be able to turn Philadelphia around next season? Are they going to continue to free fall? The Steelers hired a new offensive coordinator. Many Steelers fans are not happy about it. Are they overreacting? You know, the Ravens, did they get robbed out of a spot in the Super Bowl this year? Were the refs in favor of the Swifties? There's a lot more that we got to discuss before we do. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. Remember that we're not just a YouTube channel. We're a podcast, and we're available on Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you find your podcast from. The JT Sports Podcast is available. We're about to play a word from our sponsor, and then we're going to move on to our next topics. Does it piss you off how much you pay for your monthly phone bill? Why are you getting frustrated when our partner Mint Mobile has plans as low as $15 a month that give you unlimited talk and text on the nation's largest 5G network? Stop getting frustrated with how much you spend on your monthly phone bill and go to trymintmobile.com/JT Sports and description and pin comment down below to get access to premium wireless for only $15 a month. That's only $15 a month. Switching to Mint is easy. It only takes 15 minutes to do. If you're pissed off with how much you pay for your monthly phone bill, switch to Mint Mobile today and go to trymintmobile.com/JT Sports in description and pin comment down below to get premium wireless for only $15 a month. Stop getting upset with how much you spend on your monthly phone bill and switch to Mint Mobile today. Now, we got to focus the camera. Okay, there we go. All right. Nick Sirianni's job security in 2024 is going to be decided by if he made the right hires with his new coordinators. Vic Fangio is going to be the new defensive coordinator for Philadelphia this season, and Kellen Moore is going to be the new offensive coordinator for the Eagles this year. If these hires don't work out, it's going to be the end of Nick Sirianni in Philadelphia. Hiring Vic Fangio was a very divisive hiring when you think about the reactions that Eagles fans had to it. On one end, you look at one of the more accomplished defensive coordinators in the past decade. The Fangio 6 defense has been implemented by half of the NFL DCs out there, and he's the godfather of the most influential defense in the league. But the Dolphins defense didn't really look that good at times. Some of that was due to the injuries that they had, and some of that was just due to Vic Fangio's defense being a little bit conservative. But this is the style of defense that Nick Sirianni and Philadelphia want to run. That's why they hired one of his disciples to run it in Sean Desai. He just didn't do a good job of it. And then you get rid of Sean Desai, you replace him during late in the season with Matt Patricia, and then Matt Patricia in his first game calling plays allows a 92-yard game-winning touchdown drive to be delivered and engineered by Drew Lock. You can't get any worse with hiring Vic Fangio compared to what you had at defensive coordinator last year between Sean Desai and Matt Patricia. Kellen Moore is the more controversial hire to me, only because he was a really hot candidate to be a head coach. The first few years he was with the Dallas Cowboys, but then once Mike McCarthy got there, the play calling kind of went a little bit off the rails. Statistically, the numbers were really good for Dallas offensively under Kellen Moore, but they got rid of him because the run game wasn't as effective as what they thought it could have been. And we saw those same issues that plagued Kellen Moore his final 2 years in Dallas arise when he was the offensive coordinator for the LA Chargers. They still were one of the worst teams in the NFL when it came to running the football. Philadelphia, the problem that they had last year, outside of Jalen Hurts having major aggression, was that they weren't committed to running the football in the second half of that year. When DeAndre Swift was rolling, that's when Philadelphia was at their best, when they were 10-1. But when they got away from DeAndre Swift, they got away from the run game, they were running Jalen Hurts less, that's when this offense became less productive. Kellen Moore is seen as one of those pass-heavy coaches. He does have a little bit of some good schemes in the run game, but he's not somebody that makes that a focal point offensively. And the hire of Kellen Moore to be the play caller for Jalen Hurts next season, it is going to be really interesting to see if it ends up working, because I think there's a strong chance that it ends up being a dud. Sometimes you have guys who start to get figured out by the rest of the NFL, and Kellen Moore may be one of those dudes. He was a hot OC a while back, but now the flame has started to get thrown out. So when it comes to Nick Sirianni and his future in Philadelphia, he, with these staff hires, is putting a lot of faith in putting his job in the hands of these guys, and he needs them to deliver. I'm confident that Vic Fangio is going to work out. At worst, Philadelphia is going to have a top 15 defense. At best, this should be a top 10, top 5 unit. He was on Philadelphia's staff when they went against Kansas City in last year's Super Bowl, and he wasn't part of the staff defensively. He was a consultant who was brought in to help prepare the offense, to give them some keys to look for when it came to Steve Spagnuolo's defense. So it's not like his defense was the reason why Philadelphia lost that game. Jonathan Gannon was the defensive coordinator, and most people at the time when he took the Arizona job said that he was a little overrated. So Vic Fangio, being your defensive coordinator, is going to be a massive upgrade from what you had calling the plays last season. You know, the talent's still going to be there for Philadelphia. You got some answers that you have to find with your secondary. James Bradbury has to go. What you going to do when it comes to your safety position, you got to figure that out. But the talent up front is still there. They had so many injuries at linebacker. You got some older guys on your defensive line like Fletcher Cox, where we don't know what their future is going to be, but you have to get younger. You do like what you have in Jalen Carter. Jordan Davis looks really good at times. He is a really good run defender. Pass rushing ability still is a work in progress. But there are some young players on that Eagles defense that could be really good under Vic Fangio. You saw what Christian Wilkins was doing under him. Hell, Miami's run defense was incredible. Philly couldn't stop the run this season to save their life. And that's the major reason why they lost all those games when they had that losing streak and when they completely collapsed. Hell, Tampa Bay had success running the football against them. And this is a team that had Shaq Leonard or Darius Leonard, whatever his name is, who they signed, who was a former All-Pro, got cut by Indianapolis. And where was he at? So if he's still on the roster and they don't do anything with him, he could be a very good fit in Vic Fangio's defense. But these hires, you know, I like the hire of Vic Fangio. I don't know about Kellen Moore. He has a lot of talent to work with offensively. You look at his resume, statistically, his offenses have been really good. But with what we saw with the LA Chargers this past year and what happened against the Baltimore Ravens, I don't know if he's the right coach for Philadelphia, because you would have looked for an offensive coordinator who puts emphasis on getting the most out of the rushing attack, because that's why Philadelphia had so many problems offensively during that cold stretch. They weren't putting focus on running the football. They got away from that, and that's why they started to lose more. And with Kellen Moore being more of a pass-heavy coach, pass-centric, I have concerns about Philadelphia and how they're going to look offensively under him. I don't know if these were the right hires completely by Nick Sirianni. Vic Fangio was solid. Kellen Moore, you possibly could have done a little bit better. Now let's segue to this. You know what they say? First impressions are everything. And Oregon's about to begin their first season of Big Ten play. And they're a heavy favorite to make it into the college football playoffs. Dan Lanning is one of the best rising young coaches in the sport. And he has a really great coaching staff as well. Offensive coordinator Will Stein is probably going to become a head coach around this time next year. The coaching staff of Oregon is top-notch. This is probably the second best coaching staff in the Big Ten behind Ohio State. And they also return a lot of experience going into this season. You have 9 draft-eligible players who all come back this year. 2 of those guys being on the offensive line. Your 2 starting offensive tackles are back. Your 2 starting linebackers are back. You got your star receiver, Tess Johnson, coming back for another season. Last year, he caught 86 passes for 10 touchdowns, had 1,182 receiving yards. You went crazy in the transfer portal. You were spending a lot of money in the transfer portal this cycle. You got Dylan Gabriel, who was playing at a Heisman level at one point for Oklahoma last season. And I was surprised that he even transferred out of the program, because Jackson Arnold didn't look too hot in their Alamo Bowl loss to Arizona. So you pick him up. You also got Dante Moore, who, if Dylan Gabriel doesn't work out some way, somehow, under Will Stein, he can come in and he should succeed. So quarterback play, there isn't going to be a drop-off with Bo Nix departing for the NFL. There may be a small drop-off because Bo Nix did have, probably one of the biggest college resurgences in the history of the sport. I mean, he wasn't that good at Auburn, goes to Oregon and becomes one of the best players in Oregon football history. So I think that Dylan Gabriel has some pretty big shoes to fill in replace of Bo Nix, but I still believe there isn't going to be a major drop-off at the QB position You got Evan Stewart. You were already stacked at wide receiver. He was the best receiver in the transfer portal this cycle. So you pair him up with Tez Johnson. Not only do you have one of the best wide receiver duos in the conference, but you got one of the best wide receiver duos in all of college football. And then defensively, you continue to work on what's been your biggest weaknesses on that side of the football under Dan Lanning, which has been your lack of pass rush and your play in the secondary. You got Colby Savage, who was one of the better safeties in the Big 12 playing for Kansas State. You got Jabbar Muhammad, who spent last season with Washington. He was really good. And before that, he spent a few seasons with Oklahoma State, if my memory can serve me correctly. So Oregon is one of the most complete teams in all of college football. You look at how their Big Ten schedule lines up this year, very, very favorable, because you don't have really any tough road games outside of going on the road to play Wisconsin and Michigan. And the only reason I include Wisconsin is because I believe they're going to be better this season, year or two, under Luke Fickell than what they were last season. At home, you're going to be playing Michigan State, Ohio State, Washington. Those are three of the toughest teams that you play all year long, and you have to face them at home. And those are three of the better teams in the Big Ten this season, including Ohio State, who most people believe has just about the same amount of opportunity as you do to make it into the playoffs. So if you were to ask me who's going to end up winning the Big Ten this year, I don't see how it's not Oregon. Ohio State, they lack physicality. They lack toughness. Oregon doesn't have that same problem under Dan Lanning. They're a physical football team. People think just because Oregon and USC and UCLA and whoever else is coming into the Big Ten is coming from the West Coast that they're soft. The West Coast is not soft. Like, y'all don't know about those Samoans that they be having on the offensive line in the Pac-12. Like, those Samoans, they're athletic, they're big, they're nasty, they're physical, they're tough too. Like, Oregon is going to surprise a lot of people with the way they're just going to run through the Big Ten, and they're going to do it fairly easily. I'm expecting Oregon to go undefeated in Big Ten conference play this year, and they should easily win the Big Ten. Ohio State, you trust Ryan Day against Dan Lanning? They hired Bill O'Brien as their offensive coordinator. He's not a bad OC, but you compare him to Will Stein? Yeah, like, that's not even a conversation. I look at Oregon as a program that is waiting for their moment. The only thing that kept them from making it into the playoffs last year was Kalen DeBoer and Michael Penix. Those two guys are gone. Jeff Fish is a serviceable replacement, but he's no Kalen DeBoer. Kalen DeBoer is a stud. This dude was a prodigy as a head coach. That's the only team that Oregon lost to last year. And at one point, there were people saying that they were the best team in college football, or the second best team in college football behind Michigan. That's why so many people were stunned when they lost to Washington again in the Pac-12 championship. Hell, there were people saying that they could have been Georgia or any other team that was in the conversation to get in the 14 playoffs this past year. Going into a Big Ten conference that is massively overrated, where the only three teams that have been important in this conference have been Penn State, Michigan, and Ohio State, I don't get why people make it seem like Oregon's just going to be in for this reality check because they come from the Pac-12 and the Pac-12 was perceived to be a soft conference. Like, didn't Oregon already kick Ohio State's ass under Ryan Day before with Mario Cristobal? So it's not like Ohio State is in a position where it's their conference to lose. Same thing with Michigan. They just lost Jim Harbaugh. As much confidence as I have in Sharon Moore, Michigan from a talent standpoint doesn't compare to what Oregon is. And they also have a damn good coaching staff, one of the best in America. Like, Oregon should come in this conference and make a strong first impression on Big Ten fans or casuals out there that think that they're just finna come in this conference and they're about to get put in their place. Like, people make it seem like Ohio State is just this powerhouse of college football. Like, they've been ran over by Michigan for how many years in a row? I think that the Big Ten is so overrated And I can't wait for Oregon to come in and set a lot of people straight. Like, James Franklin and Ryan Day are solid coaches, but they're not as good as what a lot of people think. The only reason they have as good as a track record as what they have is because the conference doesn't really have that much depth. You have depth coming in now, and that depth is about to make a statement. And that's Oregon. Oregon is a team that is really close to being in that national championship conversation. And it's not about when they're going to get there. It's a matter of if they can get there this season, because the talent's there, the coaching is there, and their schedule lines up perfectly where the best teams that they're going to be facing this year are mostly going to be at home. Other than Michigan, you're playing Wisconsin, Michigan, and UCLA at home this season, and it's really hard to win at Autzen Stadium. You go into the zoo, you're lucky to walk out with a W. Very rarely can you beat Oregon when they're playing with home field advantage. So there's no reason why they should lose at home this season. They should take care of Washington. They should take care of Ohio State. Listen, when the 2024 college football win totals get officially released, I'm going straight to the DraftKings app, and I'm putting in $1,000 wager futures bet on Oregon winning the Big Ten this year. That's how much confidence I have in Dan Lanning and this Oregon staff being able to get this team to the conference championship this year. Listen, if you think that Oregon is not about to be good because they're a West Coast team and you're under this assumption that these Pac-12 teams are soft, you're in for a reality check, because Dan Lanning, he's a Georgia guy. And one thing about those Kirby Smart disciples and assistant coaches is that they also share his same philosophy when it comes to team building. Being tough up front, great offensive line play, that's what you get out of Oregon. They put a lot of players on that offensive line in the NFL. Hell, they should come into the Big Ten and immediately have either the best or second best offensive line in the conference. Ohio State, they haven't really been as dominant as what you may think up front, especially on their offensive line. Like, I got way more confidence in Dan Lanning being able to come through and deliver on expectations than I do Ryan Day or James Franklin. Sharon Moore, with everything that he's going to have to do this season with Jim Harbaugh departing, it's going to take a couple of years for Michigan to get back rolling again. I don't think they're going to be a passover, but I just don't think they're going to be able to beat Oregon. Oregon's just a different monster. Like, this is one of the 5 best teams coming into next season. And I know it's really early to be making bold predictions, but Oregon, their time is coming, and their time is now. Many Steeler fans are really upset with the hiring of the new offensive coordinator, which is former Atlanta Falcons head coach Arthur Smith. Now, Arthur Smith, you know, his time as a head coach in Atlanta was very unmemorable. And the only memory that you have of Arthur Smith as Atlanta's head coach is the fact that he used his best players as decoys, couldn't get his best playmakers on offense the ball, and it's a large reason why he now is the OC for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But for the people who believe this is a bad hire because of what went wrong with Arthur Smith in Atlanta, I would like to remind you that the last time Mike Tomlin hired the offensive coordinator that was a failed head coach, he had the Killer Bees, Big Ben, Le'Veon Bell, and Antonio Brown playing the best football of their careers, and that was Todd Haley. When Todd Haley got hired by Mike Tomlin, he was just fired by Kansas City as their head coach. And he was offensive minded, and he didn't really do a lot with that offense. But he came to Pittsburgh, and Big Ben and AB and Le'Veon were balling out under him. Arthur Smith, he had a lot of success when he was the offensive coordinator with the Tennessee Titans under Mike Vrabel. He had Ryan Tannehill playing the best football of his career. Derrick Henry was chugging along. A.J. Brown, really early into his career, was starting to cement himself as one of the best up-and-coming receivers in the league at that time. And then Corey Davis. Corey Davis, who in most people's eyes was a major draft disappointment, being a former first-round pick, not really playing at that high of a level. He got the most out of Corey Davis that anybody was able to get out of him. So Arthur Smith has shown the ability to know how to get the best players on his offense to football. And you got to be really naive to think that Arthur Smith is about to become the play caller on the Steelers offense, not use Deontay Johnson and George Pickens, and neither one of those guys have anything to say about it. Like, one thing we know about George Pickens and Deontay Johnson is that they're going to let you know when they're frustrated, they're going to let you know when they want the football, and they're going to let you hear it. So if Arthur Smith tries to play that shit when he's not going to give George Pickens and Deontay the football, of course, those guys are going to get frustrated. We're going to see it on the sidelines, and that's going to put pressure on them. And Mike Tomlin's last two OCs weren't hired by him. Matt Canada was only hired because the Rooneys wanted him to be the OC. They wanted him to be promoted from QB's coach. They were the ones who made that decision, not Mike Tomlin, and that's public information. You can look that up. All you got to do is Google who hired Matt Canada, and you will see that it was the Rooneys who had their hands involved in that mostly. And Randy Fichtner, Mike Tomlin hired him, but it wasn't really a move that Mike Tomlin wanted to make. It was really a move that Mike Tomlin made because Todd Haley and Big Ben didn't have a good relationship. Big Ben wanted Todd Haley gone, so Mike Tomlin appeased Big Ben as what any good head coach would do when he got a Hall of Fame quarterback. And he hired the guy to be the OC that Big Ben had the best relationship with. And ultimately, when Big Ben retired, it didn't work out. You bring in Matt Canada, that didn't work out because that wasn't the decision that Mike Tomlin really had too much of a say in. So now, with Mike Tomlin being able to go out there and perform an OC search with him having the say in who gets the nod, I trust his judgment. Mike Tomlin, he hasn't had a lot of postseason success, and the Rooneys addressed that. They said, we want to get back to having success in the postseason. We're tired of going one and done in the playoffs every single time we make it. Mike Tomlin knows that his job security is in question and that he needs to produce some results, and they need to win in the playoffs starting now, and getting Arthur Smith is going to be a big stepping stone to be able to accomplish that. Everybody's talking about, well, is this the right guy for Kenny Pickett? Like, Kenny Pickett needs to be better. Like, there's not enough Steelers fans that put enough accountability on Kenny Pickett for where he's at in his career. Yeah, he had a bad offensive coordinator, but Matt Canada wasn't the guy on the field who was overthrowing wide receivers when they were open on 4-yard drag routes. Kenny Pickett had Deontay Johnson and George Pickens throwing temper tantrums on the sidelines. When Mason Rudolph took over as QB1, Deontay Johnson and George Pickens looked like they had fun playing football again. Kenny Pickett isn't that good. Arthur Smith just needs to make Kenny Pickett look serviceable. Yeah, you can say in hindsight, this move should be made for the development of Kenny Pickett, but really is made just to see if he can get anything out of this dude. He's not a good QB. And even if he reaches his potential, his potential is no more better than a top 15 quarterback at best. So I'd rather Pittsburgh bring back Mason Rudolph and they run it back with Mason Rudolph, find a quarterback the year after, than give Kenny Pickett just the reins to the Lamborghini. Arthur Smith, also when he was the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons, for all the people that said he was only good because he gave it to Derrick Henry, Atlanta still had one of the better rushing attacks in the National Football League, which is something that Mike Tomlin and the Rooneys also have stated several times that they want to get back to. They want to make sure that the offense focuses running the football and the importance that it has on winning games. And you think about what the run game has always meant to the Steelers franchise. When you think about the Pittsburgh Steelers football, you always think two things: great defense, great run game. Jaylen Warren and Najee Harris are one of the best 1-2 punches in the NFL right now, especially with how they played after week 9. They were damn near unstoppable. So Arthur Smith, with his focus and how he specializes in the run game and his run scheme, this should be one of the best rushing attacks in the NFL next season. And when it comes to Kenny Pickett, he can be a good game manager in an offense like this because what he does best is he doesn't turn over the football. Now, there are times when Kenny Pickett has his moments, but, regardless who's at QB, Arthur Smith isn't going to have anybody playing like a superstar. But just because this dude is a failed head coach doesn't mean that he was a bad hire by Mike Tomlin as offensive coordinator. There are plenty of head coaches who have failed in the league that have just been great coordinators, not cut out to be head coaches. Josh McDaniels is a great offensive coordinator. He's not a good head coach. There are other head coaches, that are good coordinators, but just not cut to be head coaches, because being a head coach involves more than just knowing X's and O's. You got to be a good leader of men. You got to have good people skills. Arthur Smith was lacking some of the necessary skills to be a good head coach, and that's why he failed in Atlanta. But that doesn't mean that this is going to be an awful hire by Pittsburgh. This was probably one of the best hires that Pittsburgh could make. When I first saw the news, I said, this is solid. People saying Eric Bieniemy is not good. Like, if you watched any Washington Commanders game, you would see that Eric Bieniemy was not it. Hell, go watch the game that they got blown the hell out by the Dallas Cowboys. They had like 3 third and 1, 4th and 1 opportunities, and they didn't go for a quarterback sneak on any of them. Like, Eric Bieniemy has really questionable play calling. He's not as good as what people think. People give Eric Bieniemy way too much props. Byron Leftwich got fired and replaced for Dave Canales, and he did God's work with Baker Mayfield. Like, there were not better offensive coordinators, at least more qualified offensive coordinators than Arthur Smith. He wasn't a good head coach, but at least he's a good offensive coordinator, and his rap sheet supports that. If Mike Tomlin would have been fired, then he would have been replaced by a guy who many people would have put as the number 1 pick to replace him. It would have been Mike Vrabel. And guess who would have came with Mike Vrabel if he was coaching Pittsburgh right now? Arthur Smith. Like, Arthur Smith is a really good offensive coordinator. He's just not a great head coach. And this is somebody that also probably wants to be a head coach again. So he has more motivation to, do well, succeed in Pittsburgh, a good organization, a stable organization under Mike Tomlin, that he should succeed and maybe he gets another opportunity. Mike Tomlin doesn't make terrible staff hires necessarily. There were a couple of staff hires that he's made along the last couple of years that have been a little bit questionable, but we don't know if those were completely his decisions or if that was the Rooney's who made those decisions. But with Mike Tomlin being the guy who we know made this hire, I have trust in his judgment. And despite him being a coach that underachieves nearly every single season, not winning the playoffs, at least you know that you're going to get a 9-win season consistently out of Mike Tomlin. And because of that, if you can just get a little bit more juice out of the offense, that's the difference between 2 wins and being an 11-win team in the playoffs and being a 9-win team looking outside of the playoffs. Arthur Smith, this was a pretty good hire by Mike Tomlin. He's qualified, good resume. He's been able to produce serviceable offenses in the past. He was really good with the Tennessee Titans at one point. So it's like, I don't see how this doesn't work out for Pittsburgh. People are just looking at what he did in Atlanta. It's a difference when you're running the show and when you're working under somebody. And Mike Tomlin isn't about to let his best players be underutilized. Arthur Smith still has to answer to him. And if Mike Tomlin says, give Deontay and Pickens the ball, guess what Arthur Smith has to do? Find a way to get them the damn football. So I like the hire of Arthur Smith as the offensive coordinator of Pittsburgh. I think a lot of Steelers fans who are against this hire are overreacting. Like Mike Tomlin, I trust his judgment. The fact that he's never had a losing season means that there's something that he does well as a head coach. And I'm going to give him the benefit of a doubt. And this is a big prove-it year for Mike Tomlin. And this was the necessary hire that he had to make to turn things around and get this offense back on the right track. If Mason Rudolph was balling out with the interim OC and Kenny Pickett was only putting up 16 points in his best performance, then I think that tells you more about Kenny Pickett than it does who was calling the plays in that situation, in my opinion. So if Kenny Pickett just isn't good, I don't think it's because of Arthur Smith. I just think Kenny Pickett isn't it. And the Steelers just don't want to admit that. I really want them to bring back Mason Rudolph, make him QB1, and then we run it with him. And then upgrade later on. But Arthur Smith, At least you know he's going to get the most out of the run game. I don't think he's going to make the same mistake calling plays for Pittsburgh that led to his demise in Atlanta. He's going to get the ball to the Steelers' best players on offense. And it only makes sense because it's like, if you're Mike Tomlin, why would you allow the same issues that, caused problems in the locker room last year to transpire again? He's going to make sure that Arthur Smith gets the best players the ball. And that's the key to winning if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers offensively. Get your best playmakers the football. Why wouldn't you give the ball to your best players on offense that give you the best chance to win? Okay, so there are many Ravens fans that feel like they were cheated out of a spot in this year's Super Bowl by the NFL because the league wanted to have Taylor Swift and Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl, and there was no other way they weren't going to make that happen. And the Baltimore Ravens had to be the casualty of that. Now, here's the thing. There were a lot of questionable no calls by this refereeing crew in this AFC Championship game. There were a couple of pass interference calls and some tugging and pulling by Kansas City secondary that didn't get called. Some of them, you could argue, were some good no calls. Some of them, And then you had the Zay Flowers fumble, which, maybe his knee was down. Maybe it was just a good play by L'Jarius Sneed, but I do feel there's a little bit of some truth to the NFL wanting Taylor Swift in Kansas City to be in the Super Bowl. Maybe some calls were made and they put that fix in, but ultimately, the Baltimore Ravens, they had some questionable calls on them, but there also were some calls that were the necessary ones, like Roquan Smith's unnecessary roughness penalty or Zay Flowers' taunting penalty. Baltimore didn't lose this game because they got screwed by the refs. They lost this game because they screwed themselves. And I understand that there are Ravens fans that are having a hard time trying to digest this loss, because it definitely puts a damper and a sour note on what was a very fantastic season. But the Ravens just didn't show up. When you only give your running back 6 carries, when you're the best rushing team in the NFL and you get away from your identity, then you lose games like this. When your star quarterback, who's winning his second MVP award this season, throws an interception late in the fourth quarter in the triple coverage, you lose. The referees didn't have anything to do with Lamar Jackson throwing that pick. They didn't have anything to do with the Baltimore Ravens only giving their running back 6 carries. The Ravens weren't robbed by the officiating in the AFC. They were robbed by themselves. It was Ravens on Ravens crime out there in the AFC Championship. I get that you Ravens fans feel like there were some calls that didn't go your way that should have, and that's understandable, but that's every game. You can say that maybe the refs put the fix in against the Detroit Lions. The referees are always going to make bad calls. In every single game, there's going to be bad calls in the Super Bowl. There's just nothing that you can do with that. All you can do is go out there and do what you can to win the game without allowing the referees to dictate it. If you don't want the referees to dictate the outcome of the game, then don't allow them to. Don't put yourself in a position for them to. I know that's easier said than done, but maybe if the Ravens played true to their identity and they ran the damn football like they were doing for all of this season until this game happened, they would have won. If Lamar Jackson doesn't throw a stupid interception, maybe they win. But, the whole narrative that the referees robbed the Ravens and they put the fix in for Taylor Swift and the Chiefs getting into the Super Bowl, like, nobody expected Kansas City to get into the Super Bowl. Kansas City is in the Super Bowl because, first of all, they have a great coaching staff. You got arguably the greatest quarterback ever in Patrick Mahomes. You got Andy Reid, Travis Kelce, and you got a great defense. The reason they're in the Super Bowl is because they were able to outplay a Miami team that just wasn't good, a Buffalo Bills team that, like the Ravens, self-imploded on themselves late in that game, and then you play the Ravens team that just got away from what was giving them success all season long. So I don't want to hear no excuses about the referees costing the Baltimore Ravens when this team cost themselves. Todd Monken only gave the running backs in this game 6 total carries. That's embarrassing. When you think about Baltimore Ravens football, you think about great running back play, running the football with a stable of running backs. Hell, what the hell was the point of signing Dalvin Cook if they weren't going to use him? You know, like, I get that there were some questionable calls by these referees, and there was a lot of tugging and grabbing by Kansas City secondary, but the referees had nothing to do with Baltimore not showing up against KC, at least the offense, because the defense showed up, but the offense, I guess they left their good playbook at home, and they brought the crappy playbook to this game because I don't know what the hell we saw out of Baltimore's offense. It just was a major disappointment, but they didn't get robbed. They didn't get cheated. The Ravens are where they deserve to be at because of how they played and the poor game plan and execution. The only 2 players on offense that somewhat showed up was Zay Flowers and Lamar Jackson. That was it. OBJ didn't hear his name called. He couldn't get open. Mark Andrews, he might as well have just stayed on IR because he didn't make a single impact in this game. So it was more of the Ravens beating themselves than it was the Ravens getting beat by the Chiefs and the refs. I get it's easy to always finger point and put the blame on the referees, but Baltimore, if they would have played true to who they were, they probably would have won this game. Okay. There's a lot of rumors out there that are saying that the Raiders have a lot of interest in signing Russell Wilson. And Russell Wilson is coming off a pretty solid season, a bounce-back season under Sean Payton, and they're moving on from him. And the Raiders need a quarterback. They obviously can't roll with Aiden O'Connell. So Russell Wilson, he would be Antonio Pierce, QB1, to begin his Raiders coaching career after he worked so hard to get the full-time coaching job. He will put his trust in Russell Wilson, a quarterback that's about to be 36 years old at the start of next season, that obviously is regressing, going up against Patrick Mahomes twice, Jim Harbaugh and Justin Herbert twice, and then you're going to have to see Sean Payton, a future Hall of Fame coach, twice. And Russell Wilson is the answer to the Raiders' quarterback struggles? Yeah, if the Raiders were to sign Russell Wilson, it would be the fast way or the fast track way for Antonio Pierce getting fired. Because Russell Wilson is not it as the starting quarterback for the Las Vegas Raiders. If the Raiders are serious about winning and they seriously want to become Super Bowl contenders, then they need to get serious at quarterback. And getting Russell Wilson isn't getting serious, it's getting unserious. You got 2 of the best quarterbacks in the NFL in this division, Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert. And then you got Jim Harbaugh in this division now. I don't give a damn if Antonio Pierce ran through this division last year when he was the interim head coach. Because he's not going to be coaching against the same teams that he beat last year. You're going up against Jim Harbaugh, who took the 49ers to 3 straight NFC championships and the Super Bowl his first 3 years with the team when he last coached in the NFL. I don't want to hear anything about we don't know if Jim Harbaugh is going to work, because history and his resume shows that he's going to succeed and he's going to work. He's a proven head coach. Right now, Jim Harbaugh is already a top 10 coach in the league. And even if you don't have confidence that Jim Harbaugh is going to work, if you want to play devil's advocate, if you're a Raiders fan, you still believe that you're going to have a chance at beating the Chargers with a better head coach and a better defense with Russell Wilson? That's not being serious. Russell Wilson is old and regressing. If you draft a guy like Jaden Daniels in this year's draft and you want to sit him for a couple of weeks, then it would be a good idea to sign Russell Wilson. But if you're signing Russell Wilson with the plan of making him your starting quarterback, and this is the dude who you believe is going to be good enough to win you the AFC West, then Antonio Pierce is not going to succeed in Las Vegas. If Antonio Pierce, who is a defensive-minded coach, is going to win and arguably the toughest division in NFL, he needs to have a great quarterback. Russell Wilson is not a great quarterback anymore. We saw what he was under Nathaniel Hackett. The only reason he had the numbers that he had this season was because of Sean Payton. Sean Payton was the same head coach that was 5-1 at one point in his final season in New Orleans with Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston had the best touchdown interception ratio in the NFL at that time before he got injured against Tampa Bay. And he finished the season going 9-8 with several different quarterbacks. He's won with other quarterbacks not named Drew Brees. So Russell Wilson, if he was shit with Nathaniel Hackett and was all of a sudden serviceable again with Sean Payton, is that because of Russell Wilson being good, or is that because Sean Payton is a good coach and he put Russell Wilson in the best offense to maximize the current talent that he has at this stage of his career? I have to go with the latter. Russell Wilson would be an awful decision for the Raiders to be their next quarterback if their plan is him being QB1 for the whole season and him being able to go toe-to-toe with Mahomes and Justin Herbert. Like, that's not going to work. And if I was Antonio Pierce, I wouldn't even allow that to transpire. If I was Antonio Pierce, I would tell my front office, get me a truly good quarterback. I don't want no aging car pieces. I don't want a guy in Justin Fields who is unproven going into his 4th season. Like, I want a guy who I know is going to give me consistent, good quarterback play week in and week out, because I'm going against Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert and Jim Harbaugh twice a season. Like, why are people so okay with just having anything at quarterback? Why do people think you can win with anything? You need good quarterback play to make it far. Unless you're Kyle Shanahan and you just have a wizard as an offensive mind as your head coach, you're not going to go that far with just anybody at QB. If you want to win and you want to be a serious contender in the National Football League, if you're Antonio Pierce, you need a good quarterback. Either draft a quarterback in the draft or try to get a significant upgrade or somebody who you know is going to produce, like a Kirk Cousins or maybe a Baker Mayfield. Russell Wilson is aging. The majority of what has made Russell Wilson what he's been known for in his career has been his athleticism. He's 36 years old, damn near. He's getting old. He's not getting any younger. He's not getting any faster. And the reason why the offense that Sean Payton designed around Russell Wilson was heavily criticized wasn't because Sean Payton's a bad play caller, but it's because Russ was so limited that that's the best that Sean Payton could do to have a somewhat functional offense. He's not good throwing in the middle of the field. He doesn't have the same arm strength that he once had to push the ball vertically. And he isn't a good athlete anymore. He's a marginal athlete at this point in his career. And he's not a guy who's going to be able to be Houdini Russ like he was with the Seattle Seahawks when he was breaking out of 3-4 sacks and extending plays for like 20 damn seconds. That's not who Russell Wilson is anymore. For you to win with Russell Wilson, you need a great offensive coordinator or offensive-minded head coach and a lot of talent around him. The Raiders don't necessarily have that right now. And you got a head coach in Antonio Pierce who is in a division where he's going up against 2, 3 more proven coaches than what he is. You're going up against 3 of the greatest coaches in the NFL right now, 2 of them which are finna be future Hall of Famers. And Jim Harbaugh is one of the greatest football coaches ever, NFL and collegiately. You're not about to win shit with Russell Wilson. I'm tired of people trying to make it seem like Russell Wilson was failed by Denver. No, Russell Wilson, he failed Denver. They gave this dude all this money, and we want to make it seem like Russell Wilson was the victim. No, Russell Wilson played like dog shit under Nathaniel Hackett. If you're an elite quarterback, you are a veteran. You're Russell Wilson. You're supposed to be able to elevate the coaching. You're supposed to make the guy calling the plays look better than what he actually is. There were people who made it seem like Pete Carroll was the problem in Seattle. The year they get rid of Russell Wilson, they make it to the playoffs with Geno freaking Smith. That should tell you everything you need to know about where Russell Wilson is at this point in his career. He got replaced by Geno Smith, and Geno took them to the playoffs, and he played at an MVP level, and he played better than Russell Wilson that same season, and beat him in the first game. Antonio Pierce, if he wants to get fired, it would be a great decision to sign Russell Wilson. But if Antonio Pierce actually wants to succeed as the head coach in Las Vegas and actually make the Raiders relevant again, it will make more sense to go in a different direction, because a 36-year-old aging quarterback that can't win from within the pocket with regressing athleticism is not going to be the key to competing in damn near the toughest conference or division in the NFL. And hell, even in the AFC alone, this is where the majority of the NFL's top quarterbacks reside. You're not going to have a lot of success in your own division, let alone in this conference, which you have in Russell Wilson. You need a younger, better quarterback if you want to win and you want to contend in this division. And if you want to go with an aging, older, veteran quarterback that's proven, then you will go after Kirk Cousins, because he's the only quarterback that will be available on the market that you actually know you're going to get dependable quarterback play out of him. You're not going to get dependable quarterback play out of a dude that's 36 years old who doesn't have the same athleticism that he once has, which has made him what he has been when he was at his peak. I love Antonio Pierce, and I like the hire, but signing Russell Wilson to be his QB1 would be a dumbass decision. A dumbass decision. Before we move on, we got a lot more things to talk about. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. Remember that we're not just a YouTube channel, we are a podcast, and we are available on Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get your podcasts from. The JT Sports Podcast is available. Now, at the Senior Bowl, Jerry Jones was asked about Bill Belichick and the potential of Bill Belichick working with the Dallas Cowboys, and he said something really interesting. You would think with him deciding to not fire Mike McCarthy, he would say, we don't really have any plans for Bill Belichick right now. But instead, he says, no doubt, I could work with Bill Belichick. And to quote his exact statement, he said that, I have no doubt that we could work together in Dallas. Now, I don't know if Jerry Jones was trying to send a message to Mike McCarthy to say, hey, you need to step your game up, or you need to do better, because if you don't deliver next season, we're going to replace you with Bill Belichick. Or if Jerry Jones has some weird plan to maybe find a way to get Bill Belichick on the Dallas Cowboys coaching staff some way, somehow. I don't know, but this is a weird comment for him to say when you retain Mike McCarthy, but yet you're throwing out these kinds of quotes that makes it seem like you're still flirting with Bill Belichick potentially having a job in Dallas. It makes no sense, and also it's a bad business practice when it comes to handling this Mike McCarthy situation. If you have plans in your future to work with Bill Belichick, then just go ahead, fire Mike McCarthy and hire Bill Belichick. Why would you give Mike McCarthy another season just to look for his replacement in the meantime? That makes no sense, because it makes it seem like you're already having the mentality of next season is going to be another disappointment. It's going to be another 12-5 year where we get disappointed in the divisional round of the playoffs. It sounds like Jerry Jones has already conditioned himself to be okay with the disappointment that he's about to experience next season with having Mike McCarthy as the head coach still. If you are already eyeballing a replacement, that means that you already have a lack of trust in who your current guy is. You might as well go ahead and hire Bill Belichick. Why would he say this? At the Senior Bowl of all places. The Senior Bowl is supposed to be about the draft prospects who are there. Not about no damn who is going to be the future of your organization at head coach. Why does Jerry Jones always do things like this? He creates unnecessary headlines and unnecessary distractions. Now, next time we hear from Mike McCarthy, he's going to have to address this. And if I was in the media for Dallas, this is the first question that I will ask Mike McCarthy about. So, Big Mike, how you feel about Jerry Jones saying that he has no doubt that they could work together in Dallas? Does that kind of concern you? Does that make you feel some kind of way? Imagine being a head coach and I'm listening to my boss talk about how there's no doubt he could work with the greatest head coach in NFL history when I'm still employed. That makes no sense. That's kind of like, you're already in a relationship, but you're still looking for what's out there. If Jerry Jones wants to hire Bill Belichick, he should hire Bill Belichick now. Why wait? Because this quote to me obviously shows that Jerry Jones still doesn't have a lot of trust in Mike McCarthy, because this doesn't sound like an owner who has trust in his head coach. If you do, why would you make this kind of dumbass statement? You know, like, I like Jerry Jones. He's a cool cat. He's a cool owner. A lot of the players like him too, but this is something that he should have not said. And it goes back to the bigger point for why the Dallas Cowboys continue to underachieve in the playoffs. Is because Jerry Jones is too much of a control freak and wants coaches that he can manipulate and who he can puppet, because they'll allow him to say whatever he wants to. Like, if this was Bill Belichick in Mike McCarthy's shoes, and let's say the roles were reversed, like, Bill Belichick wouldn't be approving of Jerry Jones saying this. He would tell him, hey, Jerry, like, shut up real quick. You feel me? You causing way too many distractions. You know, like, Jerry Jones, as good as an owner as he has proven to be, you know, some of the things he says doesn't serve the Dallas Cowboys justice as a franchise, because it's like he creates unnecessary distractions. This should never have been brought up. This should have been, you know, we got Mike McCarthy. We're satisfied with Mike. We're working on improving for next season. We're not worried about anybody else. You know, even if in the back of your head you do have some interest in Bill Belichick next season, you don't have to let it be known to the public. Like, Jerry Jones should have never said this. And this is why the Dallas Cowboys continue to be the circus that they are. Because you got an owner who just says anything that he wants to. Nobody's checking him about it because it is his team. What you going to say to your boss? And it causes, you know, just distractions. And it's just, I wouldn't ever want to coach for Jerry Jones. You know, because this dude just does way too many things that makes the job more difficult than what it already is. You're already coaching the Dallas Cowboys. That's enough pressure in itself. Now you're manufacturing more pressure from within your own organization with you making these comments. Now, does Mike McCarthy need to step it up? Hell yeah, he does. And was this a motivational tactic for Jerry Jones to motivate Mike McCarthy a little bit? Maybe it was, but this was just one of those things that you were better off not saying than actually saying. There are some things better left unsaid, as they like to say. And this was one of those instances where Jerry Jones was asked the question and he should have just kept his mouth closed about it. And it wasn't like he was a joke. Come on, man. Y'all know Jerry Jones don't joke like that. When Jerry Jones says something, he means it. Like, when he traded for Trey Lance, when they asked him why they made the trade for him, he basically said, because I can, pretty much. Because we know Trey Lance isn't the QB of the future. Jerry Jones just said, hey, I want Trey Lance, go get him. Because that's what Jerry Jones does. He just does whatever he wants to, and he's a big reason why Dallas continues to underachieve. You know, like, I like Jerry, but there's a reason why they haven't won the Super Bowl in HD. The last time Dallas won the Super Bowl, we were watching replays on cassette tapes and VHSs. Now, 2 decades later, you don't win the Super Bowl in the HD era. You may not even win the Super Bowl in 4K. By the time you get to another Super Bowl, we probably going to have Super Bowl and 12K resolution, potentially. Y'all let me know down in the comment section down below how you feel about Jerry Jones making these comments. It just makes no sense to me how you just throw out statements like this that get the media going crazy, and you're not joking about it. And you keep Mike McCarthy knowing that this dude is under a lot of scrutiny to make things a lot harder than what it already is for him. And you cause another distraction because now people are going to ask about this. I just wonder about Jerry Jones sometimes. Like, does he be partying way too hard on the yacht? It seems like it, because why the hell would you say this? Like, why? The Kansas City Chiefs at this point have cemented themselves as a dynasty in the NFL. And even if they don't win another Super Bowl and they lose to San Francisco, this still is a dynasty. But it's about to slow down regardless of what transpires in Super Bowl 58, because Kansas City now has competition in their division. You see, when the Patriots were dominating the NFL for all these decades under Tom Brady in the Bill Belichick era, it was because they had the luxury of playing in the easiest division in the NFL during those 2 decades. The Dolphins, Bills, and the New York Jets all were a joke when the Patriots dynasty was at its peak. There were only 2 seasons that the New York Jets actually were relevant. And after that, they went back to being in the pit of despair. But now you look at the AFC West, you got Sean Payton in there. We don't know who he's going to get as his quarterback, but he's a really good offensive-minded coach. He's one of the greatest offensive minds in the history of the sport. He could be somebody who potentially could halt the growth of Kansas City's dynasty. But really, you got to look at who the Chargers just hired as their new head coach in Jim Harbaugh, who really is going to throw a fork in the road for Kansas City in terms of them being able to keep their dynasty continuing and them making it to the Super Bowl every single year. And Jim Harbaugh, you know, bringing him back to the NFL is one of those earthquake moves. It's one of those moves that everybody in the NFL, player, coach, front office executive goes and they kind of have a little bit of a surprised look on their face because they say, uh-oh, they're serious about winning now. It's one of those moves that motivates you to step your game up. But Jim Harbaugh, he's going to win. And before any Chiefs fan in the comments fan says, man, you don't know what Jim Harbaugh is going to win. He's going to win. You want to know how I know Jim Harbaugh is going to win? Because he's proven that he's able to win anywhere he's at. He was winning at San Diego State, Stanford, led the 49ers to 3 straight NFC championships and the Super Bowl in his first 3 seasons. He led Michigan to a national championship, 3 straight Big Ten titles. Jim Harbaugh is a winner. That's all he knows is winning. And when you have a coach this good, he's no Andy Reid, but he definitely is an elite head coach. He may not be an elite NFL coach, but he's just an elite football coach in general because he knows how to have success. He knows how to change a franchise. And it's not going to take that long to get this thing up off the ground. The Chargers are a Super Bowl contender as soon as the Super Bowl concludes and we start focusing on next season, because when you have a coach this good as Jim Harbaugh and you give him a quarterback as good as what Justin Herbert is, you got the potential to become something special. And the only thing that has hindered Justin Herbert's development and being able to have success is the fact that he hasn't had a head coach as good as what Jim Harbaugh is. Jim Harbaugh is maybe the best head coach that the Chargers have ever hired in their franchise history. Even when they were back in San Diego. If you're Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, you definitely look at this Jim Harbaugh hiring and you say, okay, like, we need to step our game up. Like, Jim Harbaugh is going to get to a couple of Super Bowls. And he's going to knock Kansas City out the way en route to doing that. Like, I have a 5 out of 5 confidence level that Jim Harbaugh is going to at least reach 2 Super Bowls as the head coach of the LA Chargers. And it doesn't matter if Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes are in this division. Say what you want to. Like, Jim Harbaugh, he may not be as good as what Andy Reid is, but he's definitely in that heavyweight class. He's definitely in discussion for one of the best coaches in the National Football League just because of what he did the last time he was in the league. It doesn't matter that he's been out of the league for a decade. Like, he's a great coach. He knows how to win. His methods of building a winning franchise works on any level, rather it be pro, collegiate, high school, middle school. This is an all-around great coach. And when you have a head coach this special, with the quarterback this special, and with the talent that the Chargers currently have right now, there's no reason why the Chargers aren't going to be able to win the AFC West and dethrone Kansas City en route to doing that. The reason why they've run this division is because the coaching has always been terrible. The Broncos have been through numerous quarterbacks and numerous head coaches ever since Peyton Manning retired and won that last Super Bowl back in 2015. They've been looking for answers ever since. Same thing with the LA Chargers. Like, the LA Chargers haven't had a good head coach in decades. And you think about the Raiders, like, the Raiders, we don't even need to talk about them right now because when have they ever been a factor? And they still aren't a factor because we all like Antonio Pierce, but he's unproven. He's the most unproven coach in this division. You talk about coaches who are positioned to fail. Antonio Pierce is in prime position to get fired just based on the talent that is in this division alone from coaching. And Jim Harbaugh, with how much of a program builder he is, how good he is at turning around franchises and making them a powerhouse, He's going to do the same thing with the Chargers, and the Chargers are going to be knocking at Kansas City's doorstep for the throne in the AFC. And they got the quarterback to do so. They now have the coach to do so too. With them having an improved defense, them having a coach that's going to make better decisions in game, not stupid gambles on fourth down, Jim Harbaugh thrives in big time games. And this reminds me a lot like how the 49ers Seattle Seahawks rivalry was. You had two teams who were good enough to make it to the Super Bowl nearly every single season during that time. And whoever won that game when they matched off against each other in the playoffs most likely was going to win it all, you would think. You know, like Andy Reid and Kansas City, I think they're in a lot of trouble. And especially if Andy Reid retires, like how some people are saying, but even if he comes back, they still are going to have some competition. Like, I don't think they're just about to run over everybody else in this division like they have done under Andy Reid for well over a decade. Like, this has been the division every single season, damn near. But I think that a lot of things are about to change with Jim Harbaugh getting hired as the Chargers' next head coach. We got another backup quarterback making it to the Pro Bowl this year. Last year, Tyler Huntley shocked us all when he was announced as a participant in the Pro Bowl games. And we were thinking, okay, this is just a one-off situation. There's never going to be another backup quarterback to make it to the Pro Bowl again. But it's happened again, people. For the second straight year in a row, we got a backup quarterback making it to the Pro Bowl. And that guy is Gardner Minshew. Minshew Mania is going to the Pro Bowl. They're bringing Minshew Mania to Orlando. And this just shows how much of a joke the Pro Bowl is. Because you look at this notification pop up on your phone and you laugh at it. Gardner Minshew, the backup for Indianapolis who costed them a spot in the playoffs, is going to be representing the best of the best that the conference has to offer. Like, I get that there are quarterbacks who opted out or couldn't participate due to injuries, but you mean to tell me the best replacement for Gardner Minshew was the best replacement for whoever was in place of Gardner Minshew prior to him getting the replacement gig was nobody better? I mean, there were so many better quarterbacks than Gardner Minshew. Like, you mean to tell me that the best you could get was Indianapolis backup quarterback to make it to the Pro Bowl? This is why nobody takes this serious. Yes, people still watch. I still watch because some of the games are a little bit interesting, but this is why many people are in favor of abolishing the Pro Bowl, because the game doesn't mean anything anymore. It used to mean something to watch your favorite players, the best of the best that the NFL has to offer, going at it in their all-star game. You can't even say that the Pro Bowl games is giving you the best that the league has to offer, because Gardner Minshew isn't the best at anything in the NFL outside of being one of the better backups in the league. I mean, come on. Like, when is the Pro Bowl going to become serious again? I get that with the injury concerns and whatnot, it's hard to entice players to want to play, but there's something that they can do to incentivize the players that get voted into the Pro Bowl to want to participate. Maybe the winner of the games gets like $2 million, $3 million. Like, the NFL generates billions of dollars a year in revenue. You mean to tell me that you can't step up the rewards to entice these players, to motivate them to want to play in the Pro Bowl, which is supposed to showcase your league's biggest stars? Like, Gardner Minshew being in the Pro Bowl is a bad look for the NFL, and I'm not saying this to be disrespectful to Gardner Minshew. Like, props to him for getting voted into the Pro Bowl. This is a huge accomplishment for him. It's a career achievement, and if it's an incentive in his contract, then I got no problem with him getting a added bonus to the check because of this. But the NFL needs to do something if they are going to keep the Pro Bowl around. Because if you're going to have guys like Gardner Minshew participating in it, then why would anybody be invested in wanting to tune in? Like, the Pro Bowl isn't one of those things that you watch just because you love football. Because it's not football. It's a bunch of different games and different skill challenges that they do, and most of it isn't football related. So if you're going to have these Pro Bowl games and you want people to tune in, you have to give them a reason to tune in. And by allowing Gardner Minshew to be in the Pro Bowl, gives people all the reason not to watch the game because it's not serious. There's no way that a guy like Gardner Minshew should be in the Pro Bowl where this is supposed to be a celebration of the best players in the NFL that were fan voted. The players were able to get to this game because the fans recognized their performance on the field, thought they were good enough to get in. But you allow Gardner Minshew to get in, and, even the replacements is some kind of weird voting that allows them to get in. But, Gardner Minshew making the Pro Bowl, like, congratulations to him on the achievement. But with him being in a Pro Bowl, just gives you more reason not to watch it because it's not anything to be taken seriously. If a backup quarterback can be in your all-star game, that's a problem. The NFL needs to fix this. We should not be seeing Gardner Minshew in the Pro Bowl. Like, you guys don't know how shocked I was to see the notification that Gardner Minshew was going to be in the Pro Bowl. This is why the Pro Bowl has lost so much flavor with the audience of the NFL because there's no reason to take it seriously. Like, it's not even football at this point. And if you're going to broadcast this on national television for everybody to watch, you will at least want to give people a reason to tune in. Nobody's going to be tuning in to watch Gardner Minshew. And there are players that possibly could have been able to participate in the Pro Bowl challenges and games that didn't want to participate in it because they view it as a waste of their time. Like, they appreciate the fans voting them in and the recognition, but there's no reason to play in the Pro Bowl when you're going up against people like Gardner Minshew that you just look at and you're like, bro, you're a cool dude, but why are you on the same field as me? If I'm Justin Jefferson or a CJ Stroud, like, I'm not in any of the same tier as any of the other quarterbacks, but I'm in the Pro Bowl. And I'm not saying that to diminish Gardner Minshew, but come on, bro. Like, this isn't anything on him. This is just looking at this from a pure business standpoint. Having dudes like Tyler Huntley and Gardner Minshew getting into the Pro Bowl is a good feel-good story, but when it comes to actually making the Pro Bowl watchable, it hinders the product. And why would me as a football consumer want to watch a Pro Bowl or Pro Bowl games that don't even have anything to do to pertaining to football sometimes want to tune in to watch Gardner Minshew? If I'm tuning into the Pro Bowl, I want to watch the biggest stars of the game. I want to watch Lamar Jackson. At least when you turn into the NBA All-Star games, like, you got some players that you don't know about, and you got some players that you do recognize, but it's not completely random. Like, the guy who's in the dunk contest actually can dunk. The guy who's in the three-point challenge is one of the best three-point shooters in the game. Like, the guys who are participating at quarterback in the Pro Bowl all aren't the best quarterbacks in the NFL. And Gardner Minshew is one of them. And that's why nobody takes it serious. Like, the Pro Bowl is supposed to honor the best players in the NFL for their performance during the season. Going to the Pro Bowl is an honor. And, if you're going to showcase this on television and you want people to watch, you got to do better than allowing guys like Gardner Minshew to get in. Like, you need to incentivize the guys who actually get voted into this thing to play. Rather, if it be throwing them more money, making it better, like, we need to do better if we're the NFL when it comes to how we present the Pro Bowl. Because having guys like Gardner Minshew in the Pro Bowl is not a good look, and it's why nobody takes it serious and why a lot of people aren't going to watch. Patrick Mahomes is the unquestioned best quarterback in the National Football League right now, but who's number two? Because a couple of weeks ago, I felt it was Lamar Jackson, but after seeing him stink it up in the AFC Championship, I got to come back to the drawing board and discuss with you guys who is my new second best QB in the National Football League. Now, I got to lay y'all out my list of candidates. So first, I got Josh Allen. Josh Allen scored 50 total touchdowns this year. Like, I know Lamar Jackson has been the most valuable player for the Ravens this year. You take him off Baltimore, they're not the same team. But if you were to overlook Josh Allen's turnover issues this season, it's kind of hard to not see a guy scoring 50 total touchdowns in a season not winning MVP. And unlike Lamar Jackson, when Josh Allen lost to Patrick Mahomes, he didn't lose to Patrick Mahomes in a terrible effort. Like, Josh Allen went out swinging. He gave Kansas City everything he had. You know, and when Josh Allen loses in the postseason, it's not ugly. There's not really too many games that Josh Allen has lost in the playoffs where you can truly say he didn't show up. Like when Buffalo loses, you don't say, oh, it was all because of Josh Allen, like you do with Lamar Jackson. You can give Lamar Jackson a fair amount of blame, but with Josh Allen, you can only give him a little bit of the blame because it's not like the dude didn't show up. You talk about a quarterback that has gone toe-to-toe with Patrick Mahomes in terms of being able to replicate Patrick Mahomes' performance, going mistake-free, being able to make big throws and all kinds of crazy plays that nobody would expect any normal quarterback to be able to make. Josh Allen is that dude. And I disrespected Josh Allen before the season started when I said that he shouldn't have been on the Madden cover. You know, I was really disrespectful for saying that, and I was out of pocket for saying it, and I greatly apologize for that because I don't give a damn how many turnovers Josh Allen has. Like, if I'm looking for a fucking quarterback that can go toe-to-toe with Patrick Mahomes, I'm looking at a guy like Josh Allen, so he definitely is in consideration. And then I got Joe Burrow. Now, Joe Burrow is really overlooked when it comes to the discussion of who's the second best behind Patrick Mahomes. Now, he's not as gifted as Lamar and Josh Allen, but he's no slouch. I think Joe Burrow is a way better athlete than what people give him credit for. Against the 49ers, this dude was doing all kinds of things. He was doing quarterback draws with spin moves. Like, Joe Burrow has really underrated athleticism. He's not a guy who's going to kill you with speed, but he has a little wiggle. And when he's fully healthy, he's not only one of the best quarterbacks in the game, but he's the only quarterback who right now can actually say that they've taken down Patrick Mahomes in the AFC Championship and they've gotten through him to make it to a Super Bowl. The only quarterback outside of Joe Burrow that has beaten Mahomes in the playoffs when it's mattered has been Tom Brady. That's it. So when you play Patrick Mahomes, beating him is like the stamp of approval that you're that dude. You know, you're him. And until Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson can accomplish that, I still got to go with Joe Burrow. You see, Joe Burrow, for some reason, knows how to beat Patrick Mahomes. And I know that he's kind of viewed more in an injury-prone light, but when this dude's fully healthy and when he's at his best, he's the only quarterback that truthfully can say he has a rivalry with Patrick Mahomes. Like, people overhype this Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes battle. Like, they make it seem like it's Peyton Manning versus Tom Brady or Favre versus Joe Montana or Elway or something, when it's not. Because Josh Allen very rarely beats Patrick Mahomes when it counts. Like, when you see Cincinnati and Kansas City go at it in the playoffs, you know that there's a chance Kansas City just might lose. You ask Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes which team gives them the biggest concern when they have to see them in the postseason, it's Cincinnati. And it's not like even when Kansas City beats Cincinnati, they beat them effortlessly. The games are normally fairly close and they come down to like the last few plays of the game. Joe Burrow being able to say that he's the only quarterback to beat Patrick Mahomes, in my eyes, makes him the second best quarterback in the NFL. I get that he's been injured, but when he's on the field and he's healthy, he's playing at his best level, there's not a other quarterback that's capable of being able to beat Mahomes. Josh Allen can, but the same problem that he has, that Lamar has, in the closing minutes of the game, when Mahomes is making plays and putting Kansas City in position to win, these quarterbacks don't do enough. Joe Burrow does. And yeah, the last time he played against Mahomes in the AFC Championship last year, he threw an interception in crunch time, but the year before that, you know, he was flawless. He outplayed Patrick Mahomes in the second half of that game. You see, when you play Patrick Mahomes, you got to be on your A game. Even when Patrick Mahomes is on his C game is still better than the majority of best quarterbacks' A games. So therefore, you got to be able to capitalize when Mahomes is off, because at any minute, Mahomes could wake up and take over the game. Joe Burrow, every time he plays Patrick Mahomes, that doesn't happen, because he's the only quarterback that steps up when the game is on the line. Lamar and Josh Allen performs a little bit better than what Lamar does. Lamar Jackson just completely melts. But Josh Allen, the last 2 minutes, there are some questionable decisions that he makes. Joe Burrow is the only quarterback that you can trust to go out there, go toe-to-toe for Patrick Mahomes, and be able to win you the game with the ball in his hands in the final closing minutes. So Joe Burrow, to me, right now, is the second best quarterback in the NFL. He's the only quarterback that has showed me he's been able to beat Mahomes in the postseason when it matters. And that has to be taken into account. I don't care if he doesn't have an MVP. I don't care if he's not as talented as Josh Allen and LJ. Like, Joe Burrow, he's that dude. And until Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson can take down Mahomes in the postseason, I still got to go with Joe Burrow. Like Ric Flair says, to be the man, you have to beat the man. And Joe Burrow has beaten the man. Like, we need to talk about the Joe Burrow versus Patrick Mahomes matchup more than we talk about Lamar versus Patrick or Josh Allen versus Patrick, because those truly aren't rivalries. Like, when Cincinnati and Kansas City play, it's a legit rivalry. Joe Burrow has a winning record over Patrick Mahomes in Arrowhead. There's a reason why they were calling that thing Burrowhead. So Josh Allen, Lamar, you can say they're more talented than Joe Burrow, but in terms of being able to execute and beat Patrick Mahomes when it counts with a spot in the Super Bowl on the line, Joe Burrow is the only one that's been able to get it done. So he's the second best quarterback in the National Football League to me. This is it for this episode of the JT Sports Podcast. I appreciate everybody for tuning in. Like I said earlier, this is probably going to be the last live stream of the week. I got a lot of work and assignments that I have to start working on, so I won't be going live tomorrow, but I definitely will be live either Sunday or Monday, and we're going to be breaking down the Super Bowl a lot. And if you haven't already, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. Remember that you can find us available in all podcasting formats on Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get your podcasts from. The JT Sports Podcast is available, and I will see you guys